welcome back. Thank you for joining us for the second half of today's episode.
Yep.
So, we've got 2 new guests joining us this part.
We are keeping with the BCP and Dorset theme.
Yep, one was part introduced earlier.
Yes.
So,
But maybe you could introduce yourselves.
Yeah.
So I'm Sam Beavis and I'm a supervising social worker with BCP's fostering team. I work in the adolescents pod. And I've also got a history as my parents were foster carers since the age of 12. They retired about 5 years ago. But yeah.
Oh, amazing. Thank you for joining us.
I'm Lisa Coombs. I'm a team manager in the fostering service, but I also oversee stay and put and supported lodgings. And I was a little bit introduced earlier because I'm care experienced and my foster dad's here and has done a podcast.
He has
it's
been
nice
with
to
us.
be here.
Yes. He was with us for the first session. So thank you for joining us. So support, fostering, BCP, Dorset. What's different about BCP?
So BCP became a unitary authority or a single authority about 4 or 5 years ago. And this thing is now something like the 7th largest local authority in the country. We're 21 miles wide, 380 plus foster carers. So we're a pretty big local authority. And it stretches across some of the most impoverished and most affluent parts of the country. So trying to work with kind of that wide variety of care and that wide variety of young person kind of needs workers who have kind of good knowledge of all of it and can adapt to the situations. That's kind of a quick overview of what BCP is, and it's
Definitely makes it kind of unique for the region as well, doesn't it? And like you say, kind of areas of high affluence, areas of kind of lower income, lower with kind of the economy. What about Dorset?
Yeah, I would kind of echo that really around the affluence and the lower income and the diversity of it. I think in Dorset, if I think about, our children and fostering, we really understand that it takes a village to raise a child. So now we've obviously got all the mockingbirds set up. I think we've got 5, 6 constellations. So really focusing on that, what do we do with our own children? Let's go for a sleepover. I know my children go for sleepovers. So in terms of fostering, it's relying on your peers and making it as ordinary as possible for our children. And I think in Dorset we've been on quite a journey. So we've just got, I am going to put it in there, outstanding.
Yes,
Amazing.
you did. It's
So,
amazing.
Yeah, it's been really nice for me. I've been there for about, I think, 9 years, including my placements and stuff. So it's been really nice to see the growth. Yeah. And I would also pride ourselves on the fact that we are really child-friendly. So kind of what we were saying earlier, our language being a lot more kinder and caring and compassionate. It's a nice local authority to work for.
I should probably add that we didn't quite jump to the outstanding, but we did jump up 2 levels last year and get up to a good rating. So we were in not such a good place the last couple of years, but kind of we're following Dorset in going up those ranks. So we're looking for outstanding next time.
Fantastic. And what that evidence is, isn't it? Kind of the outstanding and the good is around practice and care of children and young people, within the community and within kind of fostering. So that's fantastic. There was something you mentioned there. About the use of language. Yeah. We were talking, weren't we, before we kind of came on, really talking about the use of language, and we get kind of caught up into some of the words. And there are so many different kind of terminologies and words for different things, but ultimately what we're talking about in these podcasts is we're talking about homes for children, and homes for young people. And sometimes we may accidentally use the word placement or respite. And what we mean is finding homes for children. But the importance of language, it's so significant, isn't it?
So important. And I know we spoke about it earlier, but I, as part of growing older, gained access to my files. So I think before I did that, when I was a social worker, it was for children in care as well. I was already quite passionate about use of language. And then I got access to my files and there was quite a lot of remarks in there that really hurt me reading as an adult. One of them in particular was from a teacher. I don't think he ever liked me, but he, in my school report, referred to me as a disappointment. And, you know, I kind of sat on that and reflected on that. And even now we sometimes hear people say, well, you know, little Bobby, who's 8, has been exhibiting violence behaviour and has been dysregulated. And you're like, what does that actually even mean?
Yeah.
You know, because my daughters, they've had a lovely upbringing, but they can be tricky. And actually, it is sometimes that they've just had a tantrum because they haven't had what they want. So I do quite a lot, and I think my team are like, oh, Lisa, she's doing it again. But a lot of work around, but what does that mean? Let's take all the long, technical jargon out of it, and let's just write it for what it is. Sometimes they can have sad and tricky days, and this is how they need to be supported on those days. And I think that's what I'm proud of with Dorset, because there was quite a lot of us on the ground, writing to the children. But I've really started to notice all the way at the top now that there's a complete change. And like you say, I think everybody's guilty sometimes of saying the word placement, but it's we're on that journey now to really change our language. A lot of our paperwork's being changed. So that's really good, because when you've got on a form, placement, you're going to follow that script, aren't you? So that's I think right now actually is being resolved to be a lot more strength-based for our children.
And I think that's really important. Like you say, you mentioned the example there, sort of like your experience with your birth children. Actually, one of the barriers, and we touched on this in the first half of the podcast, people differentiate between their children and looked after children. I think people forget, actually, everyone just wants loving homes, which is the whole reason for all of us being here.
It's a common conversation I have with some of my carers, is when we look at some behaviours young people in care exhibiting, I try actually, is it that because they're a young care and it's trauma-informed, or actually, would any teenager show that?
Yeah.
And can we look at, really, do we need to differentiate between these behaviours, or actually, is it that it's more just, they're a teenager? And teenage years are tough for anyone. And actually, when we write about it, let's just be honest, simple, direct. And I think you said earlier on outside the podcast that actually you're saying it to them. Sit in front of them and imagine you're saying it to them. And would you be happy saying what you said?
It's one thing I always kind of work with my team around is just imagine the child sat next to you, Imagine they are reading right now everything that you're writing, everything that you're saying, or they're in this meeting that you're in, there's many professionals meetings. Just imagine that child sat there listening to that, and think about your language, because language is so powerful, isn't it? That one word that you talked about isn't just one word. It's everything that kind of can be attached to that.
And I have had that. I have had young people access their files already, and I imagine as the years evolve and I get older, that more young people, and I hope that a lot of them will read it and think there was compassion in there. But I do always say, could you imagine not only just being written down on a bit of paper at the age of 13, 14, but now if somebody, captured all of our niggles and the things that we find difficult in our lives, because I'd probably sound demonic, I'm not going to lie. I don't think anybody would want to come near me. So it's put in that context as well, because I think a lot of our children and our teenagers, we might see some behaviour that is more on, the really worrying, especially outside in the community with exploitation. We do see that. But it's about capturing why. What's the context? Do they have a stable home? What's their journey been like up to this point?
Absolutely. And I think this is also where the young people's voice is so significant. We were talking about the importance of the foster carer's voice in, fostering ambassadors and representatives and things, but the voice of children and young people is so kind of powerful, because it's things that they have fed back to us that's helping to change our practice. And helping to kind of change the language that we are using. Within kind of Dorset and within BCP, how are you kind of capturing kind of that feedback from young people and kind of their voice and, the feedback that they may have from their care?
I mean, within BCP, we have a participation team, so a group of workers who actively engage with the young people, and we've got councils, we've got kind of young people that come together every 2 weeks, and issues that are presented to the council presented to them as well. You know, how do young people feel about these issues? How do young people feel about this particular bit of whatever? And we're looking at, I think they've been involved in looking at how we build our foster carers guide. You know, and they've had a voice in putting that together, had a voice in building the young people's guide to foster care, to make sure that we are listening to them. And as social workers, as adults, we go, yeah, we think we know what the right way is. But actually, young people, they've got a voice, and actually, we don't like that. We want to hear this. We were talking about an idea in the break. And my initial, well, that's a really good idea. But actually, when someone explained to you what the child's voice was, actually, I knew that. I just hadn't considered it be that impactful. And actually say, yeah, let's not do that plan.
Yeah.
Because actually, they don't like it. And I think we do, as BCP, and I'm sure you have something similar, we do get this council, we get them all together. We make sure that whilst I'm a supervisor social worker for foster carers, I do have contact with the young people in the homes.
Yeah.
So I listen to them, I take time with them. Some of them have got my work number and so will call me regularly for different bits and pieces. And it means that I can hear their voice directly. And it's really good to be able to actually, yes, I heard it from your foster carer or your social worker, but actually you told me, and that was nice.
Yeah, I think that young person's voice is really important in any development and changes that we make in fostering, in children looked after services, in kind of social work kind of development, you know, and it's not just hearing it, it's actioning wherever possible so that it's meaningful when it's being heard. Yeah.
We've got something similar, our youth voice.
Yes.
And I took something there, I think it was for supported lodging, so it was a handbook. And I said to the person who leads it, you know, I want them to rip it apart, pull it apart, tell me what doesn't work on it and how we can make it better. And I know that the young people involved in that meet with our senior leadership team. I think it's once a month, and the senior leaders love it because, you know, that's feedback's really important and we want to be hearing it from them. And I obviously with our fostering, with our foster carers, we've got Chris and Graham who are kind of leading on the foster carer voice. And again, we want that feedback. If something isn't working quite right, how do we kind of make it better? And also, what are the positives too? Because that's really important.
Yeah. It's not just about kind of development, it's about what is already working and what we need to kind of keep. Yeah.
So Sam, you mentioned at the start when you introduced yourself about your upbringing, sort of growing up, your parents fostered. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit more about that.
So I moved to Bournemouth when I was about 12, and we kind of, Mum had some history with fostering in her childhood, so she wanted kind of to help out, and so we started fostering for Bournemouth back when I was 12, 13, and did it right through till I was in my early 30s. So yeah, kind of, it was a big part of why I became a social worker. It's a big part of why I wanted to join fostering, the type of social work I like to do. So yeah, and it was kind of similar to what Chris was kind of saying earlier from his perspective, looking kind of who we took as a family. It's a very family model we put together. They've done kind of the breadth of, we've done some long terms, some short terms, we've done some kind of emergency phone calls in the night. Looking at what Damien said about how you manage holidays, for example, that was always very interesting. Holidays were different to what my friends would have at times. So it was, yeah, kind of strongly influenced how I got to where I am today, and actually how I work with young people, I think. So, yeah.
Oh, it's really interesting. And so thinking back about that then, sort of some of the skills you mentioned that you picked up from it that maybe led you into the career you are now. So tell us a little bit more about that. So
I think there's a lot of patience with me. I'm a big guy and I look scary at times, but actually I'm a very patient person. I like to kind of just take time, sit back, listen. De-escalation, no confrontation, just someone's having a really bad day. We all get those. So actually, let's just sit, listen. How can I help today? I think when working with foster carers, I can empathise with some of the positions they're in at times. It's not always a walk in the park. There are tough days. And I think being that person they can vent to, I empathise. Actually, I recognise what you're saying. It's not always easy, but actually giving it for a reason. And as someone said earlier, in the other half of the podcast, the good days, whilst they may be few and far between, they definitely outweigh everything else. And I think I try and bring that reality to carers I'm working with and to children. Young people will go, oh, I've had a really bad day. Okay, but we have more better ones. You have days that you really quite enjoy. And I think having that, I don't think there's a social worker who hasn't had some sort of contact with social care in their early life. That's why you're coming to the job, I think. And I can bring the perspective of being a child of a foster carer and helping out with actually that side of it. And understand how they're feeling at times.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, actually. We've met quite a lot of social workers and different roles, actually some of the experiences that have led people to pursue paths and that. And obviously, Lisa, you've come from sort of the other side of the coin, really, isn't it? So tell us a little bit more about sort of that.
Yeah, so I had, I would say, a bit of a wobbly start to life. I went into care at the age of 10. I think it's really bad because some of it, there's so many gaps, but there was a family arrangement for a little while and that didn't quite work out, so then I went into care. I was quite lucky in the fact that I, had, I think, around 3 homes during my time, and I say lucky because I was tricky. I was your typical, I'm going to reject you before you reject me. I was very out there and loud and outgoing, but deep down I was probably just very sensitive and scared, but nobody would ever see that. So you would get this big, angry, lots of colourful words, I imagine, at the age of 14. And I eventually ended up moving in with Chris and Angela, who are my mama and papa smart to this day. They're amazing, and my grandparents to my babies. And I was really unsure what I wanted to do. I had a couple of good social workers, but it was never, so people go, I knew I always wanted to be a social worker. I genuinely didn't. I was really unclear. And then I had my first baby quite young, and she taught me everything about unconditional love. And I was like, I'm going to do well by you. I'm going to go out there and work. So I did. I went to college. Still didn't know what I wanted to do, to the point, when you do all your UCAS and I was like, do I want to be a nurse or a social worker? And it was actually my leaving care worker at the time said you'd make a really good social worker. And now we're here. Yeah. And, I'm really passionate about teenagers, as you can probably tell by today. I love my job, and it's 0 to 8, and I love it. I think our teenagers are so misrepresented sometimes, and it's getting on their level and understanding why they are the way they are. A baby will cry, won't they, when they need their nappy changed or they're hungry or a bottle. And I think a lot of our teenagers don't know how to say what they're going through.
It's communication, isn't it? A crying baby is communicating something's not right. And teenagers, young people don't always have the language or the knowledge or the skills or the safe relationships to be able to communicate. So what you might see is a form of communication.
Yeah, that is described as violent or aggressive. So, and I know that, and that's why I brought that book today. It was really impactful when I was younger, when I was kind of 13, 14, and it was a child who had a really, really difficult life. She went into foster care, made some quite, bad choices and ended up being harmed throughout her journey, but actually went to uni and was incredibly successful. So, it's that thing, isn't it, of you hold the pen to your own story. And so it's my special book.
Thank you for sharing that.
That's okay.
And how have you kind of maybe brought your experiences into kind of your role as team manager now?
I think it's kind of been weaved throughout my career. It was really useful in particular when I was alongside some of the teenagers, and I wouldn't always share my story. I was always quite particular, but I would share it when I needed to. And it's about that lived empathy. I think for me, and I'll never forget that one day I was moving a girl, and she kept saying, I'm so excited, and I've got butterflies. And I was thinking, I don't know if you know how you're feeling. And I think she was just so anxious. And it was really useful for me to have that experience alongside her. And again, I think in my current role now is the use of language and lots of the reframing of teenagers. So I have some quite open conversations with foster carers, and it's encouraging them to use the support that's available, whether that's peer support, whether they need a follow-up call from a manager. And yeah, I've noticed a lot of foster carers recently, because we're doing our out of hours, that have actually come to me and said, do you know what, I wouldn't have looked after that young person if I'd seen their paperwork. And that is so, it's just so impactful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because they were fine in their care and they really love caring for them. So it's those little glimmers, and you just got to put the glimmers around when you're having your conversations, and that will then reframe.
The use of language in some of the paperwork that we maybe share with foster carers, sometimes we've kind of heard, we don't always get the full picture, or kind of kind of sharing the full story. And actually it's really important that the foster carer who's looking at kind of giving a home for a child knows as much information as possible, but is helped to understand what is going on, what their behaviour might be, what experiences they might be, and actually what they may need to do as a foster carer to help that child, and what other people are doing to be able to help that child as well. And I think without all of that in place, that's when potentially we have foster carers that don't feel able to care for children, so children are moving further and further away from the community. And that becomes even more of a challenge for them.
Language, system, paperwork, still at times very risk adverse. So actually we're looking at kind of, what's all the negative stuff, what's all the things we're worried about. And we're not going to hide from that. And I'm working with trying to get a young man in one of my homes to find him a new place to live. And I'm being very honest with the fact that actually the first 4 days are going to be very tough. He's going to be very dysregulated, very upset. But at the same time, actually trying to produce a picture of the young person. Actually, once you get past those 4 days, here's what you're going to get. He's been in one of my carers' homes for the last 8 weeks. She's only supposed to have him for 3 or 4 days, because that's the way that works with her. But he's been there for 8 weeks, and actually, I know that after 4 days, anyone's going to go, actually, do you know what? He's not what I thought he was like. He's doing really well. He's happy. He's settled. And it's trying to get that. I think you were saying you have a similar, you're doing a new process in Dorset, but we call it a getting to know you. So actually, we want to know the young person more. Yes, we've seen the paper that the social worker has written, but tell us who he is, tell us who she is, tell us who they are. Give us more than just the social work jargon buzzwords that we use. Actually help the carers recognise what the young person's going to be like. And it's really important, because otherwise we get to a risk-averse place where none of our carers want to take any of our children, and that's not the point where any of us are here. We all want to help our children find these loving homes. And so it's getting to move past that risk-adverse aspect to being risk-aware, but actually we know that it's going to do really well with you. Trust us a little bit, here's what we're going to see. And then we put them there, and they move into really good homes.
Yeah, I think that's what we're starting to see a shift on now, is our number of emergency carers increasing, whereas before it's been quite hard over the last year. I think what comes with that, though, is us saying to our foster carers, this is short term, this young person will be moved. If you say that they have to move in a week, I know it's not ideal for our children, but if that's all that they can offer at that time because they've got a holiday or they've got something else they're going on, that we honour that. And there's evidence that we've started to listen to that a lot more. So I think that's also increased our availability with our carers. And like you say, I think it's quite, it kind of got me actually when that carer did say I wouldn't have looked after him if I'd read the paper. And I say that again, I think if the word starts going around that actually, these teenagers don't set fire to your homes or burgle you. There's there might be, you get a horror story.
They're teenagers.
But they might be a bit grumpy. They might use choice words, and they might run off. But they'll come back in a couple of hours.
That's how they've learned to survive. And actually, we have to kind of, by giving them the home that's open and friendly and not restrictive to them. Yes, there are boundaries in place to make sure we keep them safe. But by giving them those kind of homes, we're showing them we can trust them. And actually, they don't have to be scared of what foster care brings, because we talk about misconceptions of teenagers and misconceptions of what foster care is. And actually, it's trying to show them that it's not the perception that you've thought. It's a place where you can come in, you can feel safe. We'll look after you, we'll listen to you, and we'll take on board, and we'll do the things that actually help you develop into a young adult.
And I think actually you mentioned something really important there, and sort of a side track about the language that cares, but also plain English. I think with something like fostering, which is quite specific, people who are in it tend to know everything about it, but for people, when we talk about attracting new foster carers and those who are new to fostering, actually we have a real danger of alienating audiences by talking about things like PACE, for example, earlier, which we elaborate on and talk about what it means, but actually to someone who's completely new to it, I come from a policing background, it means something very different to me. So yeah, that's really important actually in all angles, that when we talk about things, we talk about firstly that language that cares and love in our hearts, like we talked about earlier and Emily mentioned last week, but actually we talk about and explain things to people when we have these awareness sessions and we have these meeting with prospective foster carers, that in a way they can understand and attach to and attribute and understand their role in it.
I think one of the things that I can kind of really pick up on from both of you is we have a social care team for the children and a social care team for the foster carers, but actually they are those worlds and those roles are blending more and more. It's the fostering teams are there to be able to meet the needs of the child and to support the foster carers, but there is more direct work, like you said, with children and young people within kind of the fostering teams, or helping foster care, learning more about the child or the young person to be able to help the foster carers, and kind of the two often separate departments kind of working kind of more closely together. Yeah. You've mentioned a little bit about kind of emergency kind of out of hours. And more carers are kind of now feeling kind of more confident to be able to come forward with that. In Dorset, have you got something that's also kind of around looking at children as an alternative for custody?
Yes. Yeah, so we've got a custody bed, alternate to custody care, and that is, we have, normally it's 2 lots of carers, and it'll be ideally, week blocks. Yeah. So that's one strand of the emergency response, and then we've got our out of hours emergency, and that is predominantly used for our teenagers, and that kind of comes into effect at the end of the working day, at about 5:30, and we've got more carers now coming forward to do that. I mean, admittedly, it's only a night here and there if we're stuck, but that's still a good result. That is normally up to 3 days, so it's really short, sharp, 3-day period for our young people, and then by then we would have a view to have found them a home and a family that's a bit more long-term and stable. And it's interesting the response we've had about the custody, the custody fostering, because it can be quite a scary prospect for some carers. And we had a forum recently, and one of the foster carers sat there and said, well, 9 times out of 10 they're just really tired. They've got their tail in between their legs and they want a McDonald's.
Yeah.
So it's that feedback, isn't it? And it's somebody that's done it, that's able to share with other people, which then in turn other people go, oh, I might try that. So yeah, we're getting in a much better position now with them, emergency homes for the very short term.
And I think Linda also said,
yes.
It's not when a young person, maybe as an alternative to custody, so they're not in the police cells kind of overnight. They're not angry with the foster carer that they've rocked up to.
No.
They may be feeling angry, they may be feeling kind of hurt, they may be feeling sad, scared. And some of that might be communicated to the foster carer, but they're not angry with the person that they're going to stay with.
And BCP, we don't use the alternative custody anymore because we didn't use it enough. But what we've got now is we've got group what we call retained carers.
Okay.
And they're half of our version of the out of hours service that Dorset offers. And our retained carers are skilled in kind of actually they could offer a young person alternative custody bed if they need to. They'll take the emergencies out of hours. The other half is we've got yes/no carers who can kind of, depending on what their situation is, where they are at the moment, who they've got in the house, they could say yes or no. The retained carers kind of almost go, we'll take them unless there's a real safeguarding worry, unless we've really got a big problem, they'll take anyone that comes in. And they're really good at kind of, as the young people come in, settling them down. Yeah, we're really sorry you're here, we're really sorry you're in foster care, because nobody wants you to be in foster care. Not the social workers, not the police, not your family, none of us. But we're sorry you're here. Actually, they can build that really quick relationship with them, which are supposed to be 3 days, sometimes up to 2 weeks, sometimes a bit longer. But in that time, they're very quick to build a relationship with a young person. Not complete trust, because they're still a little wary of where everything is, but enough that they can recognise, actually, this person's not looking to harm me. They just want to know where I am at any one point, so I can let them know. And they start building that kind of relationship, which when they move into the next place, which with good practice, with the best one in the world, will be their long-term placement, or not placement, their long-term home. Got to get checked off on that again. The idea is that we kind of help them go, actually, foster carers aren't these big baddies. They're genuinely there to try and help you and look after you. And when you move on, we'll help you with that transition, we'll help you with that move to the new place. And yes, the retained carers are very similar to the kind of combination between the out of hours and custody beds for us. They very much have this unique skill set where they can build very quick trust with a young person.
It's really good that you've got both of that across BCP and across Dorset. One for your carers, two for your young people and your children as well. Because, potentially if it was, I don't know, maybe a breakdown of a relationship with a young person and their foster carer, there's another local foster carer that's potentially able to step in, offer them a home for a short period of time, while you're able to kind of look at that reunification. How can we support the young person to return back home? How can we support the foster carer to feel that they're able to welcome that young person back home, what's needed? And you're able to kind of put those resources in as local authorities to be able to do that. And again, I think that is what makes caring in a local authority very unique, is having access to different provisions like that, looking at how you can, we talk about kind of, rupture and repairs in relationships and how we can kind of help to build on that.
I would say as well for the custody care and element is that not only does that have to get agreed by the custody sergeant,
yes,
it also has to get agreed by our out of hours, I think it's head of service, and that young person would not have been discharged unless they were absolutely safe to do so. Yeah. So, and 9 times out of 10, in the experience that I've read about and heard, it is, a young person has had an incident at home and might have kicked something, or, there's some damage, and it's quite low level. And I think now, we're starting to kind of hear and see that more. I think as well with our kind of emergency system is there have been a couple of, where they've had to stay a little bit longer. Again, 9 times out of 10, we're honouring that. And I have to say there's been a couple of times on duty where I'm like, oh God, do we really have to move them today? Yeah. But we have to. Yeah. We have to, because that's I know you shouldn't make promises, but that's the promise that we've made to our foster carers. So yeah, it's good to see, because then ultimately we've got homes, on that day for our children and young people when we need them.
Also looking at, yes, we don't always want to move the children, but actually our retained, our out of hours carers also typically a front door for us. Yeah. So if we've got carers that especially do that kind of work, and then they've all got young people in place, actually we're going to struggle to bring other children that need to come in. So we have that we have that place to move them to, so they're settled. Equally, if you didn't have that, if you didn't have this emergency style that we have, what you'd likely see is children moving every few days, which one move's bad enough. 2, 3 moves we can manage, but actually some children in a year go through 20-odd placements, 20-odd homes, 20-odd different settings, and that's 20-odd different traumas they've gone through, not including what they had before they came into us. And so using emergency styles, whether it's Dorsets or BCPs, allows you to take a bit of control over how we do that. Give us actually a few days to, let's get them settled into foster care. Then we've had to move them into a home with whom they can do maybe a couple of weeks whilst you get a matching done, a referrals done, and we can look for the right home. So then hopefully the next move, which would be your 1, 2, 3, actually that's hopefully going to be a long-term place for you to live. And it's trying to reduce the impact on the young person. And sometimes having maybe 2 moves is better than having 20 over a course of a year. Always, actually. That's always the case.
But I know what you mean, though, what you're trying to say. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. That it's the thought that goes into, like you say, the matching process, something actually as a local authority we talk about a lot. And actually that matching process for the child, but also for the foster care, is so important. I think one of the misconceptions of foster care we've heard someone say before was actually, I can't say no. Well, actually, you can. It's got to be right for you. It's got to be right for everyone. Otherwise, it doesn't work for anyone.
One of the worst things a carer can do is hear about a young person and go, "Oh, we really couldn't cope," but can actually say no. Yeah, because what we don't want to happen is that you say yes, and a month's time it's not working, and then we've got to go back to the drawing board and find, because it may have been the right person would have come the week after if we were still looking. I think saying no, it's not an injustice to the young person. Actually, it's beneficial. Because if you're thinking no, you're probably not the right person, which is absolutely fine. We'll just have to go back and find the right one for them and the right one for the foster carer as well.
I think this is where some of the work is coming in around matching and kind of better understanding what the fostering family is able to deliver and able to provide against kind of what is that child or that young person's kind of needs, and looking at kind of different tools to be able to have more informed matching, to kind of know what the foster carer skills are, if it's a match. You know, I think, Lisa, you were talking about a new kind of system that's been brought in Dorset that's helping with that matching.
Yeah, so it's called Valuing Care, and it's essentially you have a questionnaire.
Yeah.
It's a questionnaire.
Yeah.
I was thinking surfing. Questionnaire. And that is completed for the foster carer, and then we have it completed for the child. So I think right now there's over 150 of our children that have had their questionnaires, and we're just rolling them out in fostering from our foster carers. And I've seen a few that, you know, when they align, it's really quite interesting. So you might have a child that is not very safe in the community and they would score quite low, but how they do it is the foster carers' skills would peak, so you could see it really visually where they work and how they fit. And yeah, I'm quite excited actually to see how it rolls out and how we get that into practice. It's in early days, but this company that we've kind of brought in to do it, they've had some really good results.
I think anything that we can do, again, like to support that kind of matching and that success is going to reduce the number of kind of homes that child potentially is going to have. It's going to give more confidence to the foster carer, and then kind of build a support package around kind of what might be needed.
None of us can get our words out.
I know.
It's only the start of the week, so I have to worry.
Yeah, it's only Monday.
And I think as well, by, you know, with the valuing care and the matching, if you can look early on and say, oh, do you know, this looks viable, this looks like that carer might be able to offer little Bobby quite a lot, but these are the areas that we might struggle with. And these are the areas where it's not that the foster carer hasn't got the skills or capabilities, but what can we put in to support this home and to make it successful? And, you know, we are really open in Dorset and fostering, and I quite often say, you know, what is it that we need? Do you need support with school runs? You know, it's going from it can either be emotionally, do you need someone to call at 5 o'clock at night, or do you need practical help? Do you need support with the school runs? So I always say that we need to think outside the box. How can we support it and make it work?
And I think having that local, you were saying something earlier on, but actually the idea of it being local and supportive, I think lots of that can be done. Lots of what we can do is done because it's local. It's not spread out across the south. It's, you know, for BCP, our carers, yes, it's 21 miles wide, but that's not that far to get from one A to B. You know, we can put in, you were saying, do you need someone to do lists? Well, actually, if you can't do it, what other carers in the area can offer that help out? What social workers on the team that can do that possibly to help out? You need a phone call at 5 o'clock, or you need someone to be there in person. Well, if you're in an IFA and you're covering Devon to Dover, you can't offer that in-person support quite as easily with actually with local authorities. We're there. We can kind of be in person. We can really help out with that side of the support needed.
Absolutely, and we all need that, don't we? All, we all need support in different kind of ways. You were talking about kind of, support with kind of your daughter, and like, I support kind of my nephews, and I'll take them out sometimes. Everyone might need a little bit of help on a school run on a particular day because cars have broken down and things like that. And it's just being kind of creative and looking at what resources you've got within your service.
I would say I'm not very good at geography, and everyone that knows me knows that. But until I come into this job, I never knew how big Dorset was.
Yeah.
Because we're quite lucky because we've got, pockets of foster carers here, and we've got a map. So I can always draw in, right, this carer here needs support with this. Who's nearby? But yeah, I never realised quite how big Dorset is, I'm not going to lie.
And the rurality of it is a challenge as well, isn't it? So some of the local, you talked about BCP and the challenges for Dorset, is quite rural in pockets as well. So actually those access to services and everything can be a challenge, isn't it? When you talk about planning, it's things to consider, isn't it?
I think as well, that's where Mockingbird really comes in. And I was speaking to a home hub carer the other evening and said that half of the stuff they do, we don't really always hear about. But if we did, our duty systems would probably be inundated because they will do the school runs, they will nip round at tea time, so it's providing almost that family model, isn't it, to the carers and to the children.
Absolutely. They talked about being grandparents.
Yeah.
I like to say they're aunties and uncles, It's just offers that support to all of the children.
So what are your hopes then, looking forward, for fostering in the southwest for Dorset, for BCP? What are your hopes for services?
That's a big question I wasn't prepared for.
That's why I didn't ask you beforehand.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I guess I'd like to see kind of us build on our therapeutic parenting approaches. Again, more jargon words. Lots of us grew up in the 70s and 80s and 60s with what we call behavioural parenting. So the idea of consequences and getting a smack if you do something wrong or grounding. Actually, looking forward, we know that those causes brain development changes for young people. They're not developing the right way. So I'd like to see us delve into more of that therapeutic kind of attachment-based parenting. I'd like to see us doing it with more carers. That'd be really nice. But actually just having better outcomes for young people. I think it's what it comes down to for us. We've got such a big cohort. We've got a lot of kind of young people who have a wide range of challenges they're coming across. Childhood, teenage years, the lot. And it would just be nice to be able to give them more resources, more time, more support, so they can make it through their childhood into adulthood, into not fully formed adults. I'm not fully formed, but into something that's ready for them to take on life post-18.
Oh, I love it.
So, yeah, that's what I'm looking for from BCP, I guess. Yeah. What's Dorset looking for?
Yeah, and you've had a minute to think about it as well.
I know. How long have you got? I would say continue to recruit more beautiful and amazing foster carers. You can't always please every single person in life, but make sure all of our foster carers feel supported. Mm-hmm. And then in turn, our children are happy, our children are settled. I feel like I'm sat here saying about all this work I do, and I suppose there is a lot to it in the fostering service, but I would like to continue with our work around our teenagers, because they're beautiful in their own way. Mm. And we're focusing at the moment on residential step downs. Mm. And I want to make that a success with my team, and hopefully with the foster carers that we're going to recruit, because we're awesome. We can do some good old-fashioned matching there.
I love it.
And continue, I suppose, just continue what we're doing really in the journey we're on, because I think it's quite exciting, and I think the next Ofsted will be ready.
I think the residential step down is a big one for everyone.
So
it's too many young people who could be in homes with our foster carers, just because I think from BT perspective, we just haven't got the carers. That's why a lot of our residentials are used. And actually, if we had more carers, we could bring more young people back into BCP, back into, I mean, if we call Dorset, talking of Dorset now as well, but we can bring them back
We're in
into
it
local
together,
authorities. Yeah. We can bring back into local authority where the support is better, the contact's better, the family time happens.
Yeah.
Young people have access to their social worker more often. These are all things that we should be looking for young people, and actually a large chunk of our residential young people don't need to be there. They can come home if we can just have the homes.
I think it's a big thing that we're seeing across local authorities in the southwest. Obviously, it probably is nationally, but is young people and children stepping down from residential, wherever possible, and helping kind of carers to understand, some of the things that might be kind of maybe written about that young person or what they might have experienced, to understand what their care needs kind of may be. And so, supporting more children and young people out of residential. I think one of the things that we're kind of also going to be looking at across kind of the southwest as well is we're going to be looking at how we can support those who support foster carers during kind of maybe when they're in kind of blocked care, maybe when they're kind of finding it difficult to kind of care for the child or the young person that is with them. So we're just about to launch a training session which will be for your hub home carers, around how they can support their foster carers who may be in kind of blocked care. So just kind of looking at that additional support, really.
And we mentioned Mockingbird, and we have a project, so we have Mockingbird as well, not quite as far as you are, but we're kind of trying to catch up. We've also got a thing called ITAF, It Takes a Family, based off the premise of It Takes a Village. So we have that, and then we've got what we call resilience carers. And I guess lots of children in the Mockingbird, there's 8 or 9 children in Mockingbird. The ITAF has 1 child in the centre. I keep doing that. And then the resilience young people, resilience carers, taking from step down. I think block care is a big thing for all of them. The risk of actually block care or for care fatigue. And so we have these groups where we look at that partly, and to actually what course that makes sure you take time for yourself, and actually let's build your support network, which either could be other foster carers or your own friends or your own family. And we don't mind where it comes from, but it's really important that you have that time to be able to decompress.
Self-care is crucial, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was one of our foster carers' advices in one of the earlier episodes, actually. It was look after yourself, take that time to self-care, whatever that looks like for you. It's really important.
I did forget hope. Would be a big hope is to build our supported lodgings carers.
Yes.
We're quite low with some of our supported lodgings carers, and we very much need them. And I think we could also do some targeted work around the residential step outs, step ins.
So I think we had a couple of our support lodgings going to foster carers during COVID to help us with that sudden massive impact. And we've kind of progressed some back into support lodgings only. We're looking at kind of the 16 plus version of support lodgings. But those who kind of support lodgings is post 18, not quite as intense necessarily as fostering, but it's got its own challenges. And again, the rewards are just amazing though.
They really are, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're currently it's 18 plus because we haven't got all of our Ofsted registration through yet. But watch this space. Hopefully that will come soon, and then we'll be able to start moving some of our 16-year-olds in there. But we've also lost a couple due to kind of retiring and leaving to do fostering as well.
I think we're seeing more and more young people at the age of 18 doing staying put and staying longer with their foster carers, and we love kind of hearing about that. We met Emily not so long ago. She's still with her kind of fostering family, but I think supported lodgings as well is often for young people. It's just that next step when they're ready, a little bit more kind of independence, being able to kind of have I guess that little bit more kind of a step down really. And I think we're seeing that come back more and more because we all know, no matter how old you are, we all need still someone to kind of call, someone to ask for some support. It'd be good to see supported lodgings grow.
All of our supported lodgings homes are think every home's unique and different, isn't it? But all of our homes are different. We've got carers who offer quite a hands-off level of support, which is perfect for some of our young people. But then we've got other carers who are a lot more nurturing. I would always say it's that stepping stone, supported lodgings is, from foster care or residential care onto your journey to independence. So I think they're, a bit of a shout out to them as well, because they're just as special and amazing.
I think it's a massive step from 17 to 18. Young people in care who've had not a lot of childhood, so they come in at 14, 15, so we try and help them recreate some of that childhood that they would have lost. And suddenly we're to 17, actually you've got less than a year when you've got to be an adult. And so actually having that supported lodgings or staying put just allows them to try and finish their childhood development before we go, right, now you're an adult. And it gives them that step into, a couple of years, maybe a year in carer's home, so they've got a bit more experience, they can move out. And it's the relationships afterwards. Actually, let's stick on, help you out. I've had, one carer who's got 3 or 4 people who just come back to her just for coffee, just every now and again. And that's it, and some are kind of in their late 20s now. And it's just nice to see that when they were 18, they weren't just kicked out. There wasn't that, actually, we built a long-term building relationship, but goodbye. Actually, if we built a long-term building relationship, do you want to do it for longer? And that kind of really helps young people who actually, this wasn't just about looking after me until I was 18. There was genuine care and empathy put into the placement, into the home with the young children.
It's interesting as well. I bumped into one of my young people that I cared for, probably about 4 years ago, that I was, her social worker. And I bumped into her, and her home with one of her carers did not end on good terms at all. It was quite tricky. And she said, oh yeah, I'm just going to go and meet so-and-so. She went, should we go see Nanny? And looked at her little boy, and I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Because I thought it ended on really bad terms. And it's that message, isn't it, that never underestimate the impact that you make for children. And it was lovely to see their relationship was just, strong.
I like that happens more times than not. Some of the young people with the carers, they've said no, things have left the door, they've kind of launched allegations. And then 2 years later, I'm writing a review, actually, I've got a letter from the young person to the carer going, I'm really sorry for what I did, I know I messed up, and actually could I come and see you for a coffee one time? And that's the impact they made. Even when they left the house, it was really bad, and it was high tempers. Actually, when you give the young person a chance to just settle, they've gone, actually, I want to have a relationship with that person. And brilliant.
You've lived together for a period of time, like we were saying in the previous episode. Doesn't matter whether it's been a few days or a few years. Living together with somebody is quite significant. So it's amazing to be able to think. Foster care is always kind of keeping that door open, and people being able to support young people when they do want to reconnect, and supporting those relationships far into adulthood is really important. Well, thank you both for joining us. I think we've had some really good conversations of thinking about, one, what's available within both your local authorities, like hearing your experience of, living with your foster carers and how you're bringing your experiences into kind of your work and into your role, but also within yourself, like thinking about kind of fostering and your experiences and bringing that through. So thank you both very much for joining us.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
We will see everybody on the next episode.
See you again soon.